Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well-respected coach who has specialized in the area of imposter syndrome, something all of us live through, maybe not necessarily accept. From South Wales, UK, Tara Halliday. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Tara is an imposter syndrome coach. She's an author of two books. The first one is Outsmart Imposter Syndrome, which she published in 2023. And the other one is Unmasking the Coach's Guide to Imposter Syndrome. So, Tara, before we speak about imposter syndrome, a few questions for you. What inspired your transition from engineering to holistic therapy and coaching?
That's a really good question because it seems like such a big jump, right?
Mhm.
So we actually have to rewind. So why did I
Yeah,
start engineering? When
absolutely.
I was 13 and we have in school with career counselors, they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And what I wanted to be was a psychologist.
Hmm.
Great. So I go home, tell my family, they said, "Oh, no, no, no. You have to get a proper job with proper money." And so that's why I went into engineering. So I had a 10-year career in engineering.
Hmm.
And then I finally managed to get back to what I wanted to do. I retrained as a holistic therapist, and then I've been so much happier ever since.
And as they say, the rest is history.
Yes.
How did your own experience with imposter syndrome influence your professional path?
Yeah, so I didn't realize when I've had several imposter syndrome points which have dramatically changed things for
Mhm.
me. And I didn't realize that until I started looking into imposter syndrome. I've been doing work on unconditional worth, which is a deep, profound inner change to make people happier.
Mm.
And I was asked a question, is this imposter syndrome? At the time, this is 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I thought, I don't know. So I started researching it.
Mm.
And it was only when I started researching that I realized my imposter syndrome points. So one of them was where I'd freshly graduated with my engineering degree, and
Mm.
I applied for a graduate trainee position with General Electric, GE. So it's a big global
Yeah.
engineering company. And they did a psychometric test,
Mhm.
and it came back and they said, "We've done your test and we don't want to offer you the graduate trainee position."
Mm.
Oh, I said. No, they said, "Your profile shows something that we see in most of our top leaders. So
Wow.
instead, we'd
Mm.
like to offer you a fast track management position,"
Mm.
which you might think, yeah, my imposter syndrome said, that's an invitation to fail. I'm never going to be able to do that. So I said no.
Mhm.
And I went back to university where I was more comfortable studying, and I did my PhD. So I have got a PhD, but the reason I have it is because of my imposter syndrome. And so you can
Wow.
see that my career path was dramatically different, is split in
Mm.
two ways because of it.
What an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing this. Tara, you worked with many high achievers. What were the most surprising lessons on leadership and self-worth that you have picked up from your clients?
Now, this is an interesting one. So I set up from my imposter syndrome exploration, I set up a program that I discovered the root cause of imposter
Mm.
syndrome, which is that conditional worth. And I set up a program to work through a very systematic program, work through a whole load of people with it.
Mm.
And it got rid of imposter syndrome
Mhm.
better, 2 to 3 times better than any other approach. So that was brilliant. The
Mm.
surprising thing was how it changed the leader's leadership. It changed the qualities that most people think of as personality. So these people became calm under pressure,
Mhm.
unflappable.
Mm.
They had a profound insight into people's motivations. And so they could accept other people even when they're at their worst, even when they're being difficult. They can remain composed
Mhm.
and they can have a proper communication. They automatically developed compassionate leadership with good boundaries,
Mm.
and they were more productive, more focused. So the way I'd probably describe it is at the end of the program, I'd ask them, "How was your week?"
Mm.
And they'd say, typically, they'd say, "Oh, I had a quiet week."
Mhm.
Okay, tell me about that. And
Mm.
when they go through and list exactly what they've done, actually, it was a very busy week. One that before the program would have stressed them out and have them tearing their hair saying it's a nightmare week. But
Mm.
because they weren't reactive, because they stayed calm, composed, and could manage everything, it
Mm.
felt easy. It felt like a quiet week.
Amazing.
And that shift in leadership, real upgrade in leadership, was probably the most surprising, delightfully surprising thing I learned.
Well said. Let's now talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And for my viewers and listeners, tell us what is the core definition of imposter syndrome as you see it?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is the secret feeling of being a fraud when
Mm.
you're not a fraud.
Mm.
And together with that is a feeling that you don't belong and a fear that you're going to be found out.
Mm.
And it affects over 70% of high achievers at
Yeah.
some point in their career.
Yeah.
It's so prevalent.
Mm. Amazing. And what are some of the common myths or misconceptions people have about imposter syndrome?
Yeah, one is that it's a personality. It's
Hmm.
their personality or a weakness or a flaw, and it's absolutely none of those.
Hmm.
Another is that it affects women more than men.
Hmm.
It turns out that just women talk about it more than men, but
Yeah.
actually they experience it equally. And
Hmm.
another myth is that people think it's for somebody who's just beginning, because learning is uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
so people mistake that for imposter syndrome. And they
Hmm.
think, well, when I reached this
Hmm.
level of success, when
Yeah.
I've reached this level of experience, I
Hmm.
won't feel it. And so the average age of my clients is 45 because
Mhm.
that by that time they've achieved the success and the imposter syndrome hasn't gone away. And
Hmm.
finally they say, well, it's not because I'm a beginner, it's not because I don't know my stuff. It's
Hmm.
something else. It's another pattern. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well said. In your book, Outsmart Imposter Syndrome, you describe it as internal suffering. Why do you see it as such a deep emotional burden?
Yeah, so there's three symptoms of imposter syndrome. Right? There's behaviors
Mhm.
like procrastination,
Yeah.
perfectionism, over
Mm.
preparing, comparing, and a whole bunch of other ones that people get frustrated because they just can't seem to get rid of them. Now, this is
Mm.
successful people, as I said, experienced, and yet they
Mm.
can't seem to kick these. They're a habit, but they can't break the habit. So
Mm.
they judge themselves. This leads to imposter syndrome thinking like, I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't belong. Maybe I just got lucky. Maybe I don't deserve this. And that causes a stress, an internal stress, an emotional distress. And then that triggers a physiological response. So it triggers people into fight, flight, and freeze. Which changes the way that your brain operates. It,
Mm.
it reduces your IQ, your
Mm.
creativity. It creates a mess
Mm.
basically internally. And that thinking, it creates anxiety and it creates overwhelm. And then that drives the behaviors. So you've got this cycle going around. And that's why it really is a cycle of suffering because imposter syndrome doesn't need to be there. It's not
Right.
inevitable. And
Right.
so I see it as unnecessary suffering.
Mm. Great response. And what, in your view, is the role of childhood experiences in the development of an imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so the imposter syndrome,
Mm.
and maybe here's another myth, is not caused
Mm.
by some childhood trauma
Mm.
or lack
Mm.
of parenting or negative event.
Mm.
It might seem like it is.
Yeah.
So where it comes from originally is that when we're about 18 months old, a baby starts to, their brain starts to put the world in boxes,
Mm-hmm.
create a framework of the world. They
Mm-hmm.
get a sense of themselves. I'm separate from the table, from my parents, from the dog. So that they're learning this sense of separation.
Mm-hmm.
But for the vast majority of people, and this was identified back in the 1950s,
Mm-hmm.
vast majority of people, we don't separate out
Mm-hmm.
who we are from what we do.
Right.
And this is the conditional worth. So this is you do something good, you are good. You do something
Mm-hmm.
bad, you are bad.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the root cause of imposter syndrome. So yes, it is rooted in childhood, but not in the way that most people think.
Amazing. And does one's cultural background have any role to play in shaping or expressing our imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so there's research on imposter syndrome shows it's global. So there's not
Yeah.
there's not one group that escapes it,
Mm,
unfortunately,
mm,
because that worth depends on what you do, because that's so
mm.
fundamental. And that's the reason
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
And how it shows up personally, well, those things I described, the thoughts, the response, the behaviors,
Mm,
that creates a very personal profile. So
mm,
it'll show up in different ways. So
mm,
for some people, they might be more hiding their opinions, not taking opportunities. For
mm,
other people, they might be more striving, which is
mm,
perfectionism, over preparing, overworking, and things
mm,
like that.
mm,
So they haven't linked the manifestation of these symptoms to any particular culture,
mm,
more to an individual, which will depend entirely
mm.
on them.
Well said. Tara, my next question is, what impact does imposter syndrome have on team dynamics and organizational performance?
Yeah, so if you have imposter syndrome, no matter how successful you are, it reduces your ability to perform at your best.
Mm,
So when you're in that stress state, your intelligence, your IQ is 13 points lower. It's good 10% for most people.
mhm,
Your creativity is 50% lower. You're more reactive, which means that in a team dynamic situation, people are more likely to get upset, get offended, arguments, discussions devolve into a nightmare scenario. So it tears apart team dynamics when under stress. Like again, this is not personality. This is just
mm,
when people are stressed. It makes people exhausted, so they're not at their best,
mm,
and anxious and overwhelmed. And so it changes how someone shows up individually, and how all of these individuals interact as a team. So does it have an impact? Yeah, I'd say it has a very big impact. It's a really big deal.
Wow. And when you work in different organizations, different leaders, how can leaders spot and support team members who may be struggling with imposter syndrome? And a few minutes back, you did mention that almost 70% of people go through imposter syndrome.
Yeah, very good point. So if you have a team of 10 people, statistics say seven of them
Yeah.
experience imposter syndrome. So there are some more advanced things that you can do as a leader. I don't have the time to go through all of them,
Mm,
but what you can do at a very base level is help everybody stay calm.
mm,
Because if you can keep calm, then that means your nervous system isn't
yeah.
triggered. So as
Yeah.
a leader, do whatever you say to keep people calm. And if you're in a meeting that starts to get quite heated,
Mm-hmm.
call a 5 minute fresh air break. Get everyone to go out,
Mm,
take a walk, even if it's round the office.
mm,
Yeah, so have a cup of coffee, something like that, and just have a breather. You can some leaders, it depends. They might like to do a breathing exercise to calm people down. Yeah, anything that you can do. And
mm,
the other thing is to not judge people as much as you possibly can. So imposter syndrome is all about other people judging me.
mm.
That's the painful part.
Yeah.
So if as a leader you can not put yourself in that judging position. So even well done, you did a great job, which
Mm.
sounds so
Yeah.
innocent, yeah?
Mm.
Well done, you've done a great job. You could say, that project went well. What did you like about it?
Mm.
And you see, you turn the assessment of it back to the person. And, what did you like about it? What might you do differently next time?
Mm.
So it's a growth thing, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have that element of authority and judgment. And that can help people come from
Mm.
imposter syndrome as well.
What a great response. Thank you. Um, could you walk us through some of the key principles of your inner success program?
Yeah, so Inner Success is a one-to-one. It's tailored, very structured 90-day program. It's
Mhm.
got 8 modules, and it's a momentum program. So everything we do builds from the previous
Mm.
module.
Mm.
And there's 3 things we're doing. So the first 3 modules are all about getting calm. As
Mhm.
I mentioned, that ability to be calm under pressure is
Mm.
a real skill, really needs. So we calm the nervous system. We
Mm.
calm the imposter syndrome behaviors.
Mm.
We put together strategies to calm the environment around you so it's as supportive as possible. When you've done those 3, then your brain is calmer, so it's
Mm.
able to be learning rather than panicking.
Right.
And then we do a deep work in changing that core belief that drives imposter syndrome, the
Mhm.
belief that your worth is conditional.
Mm.
And we free people from that, so that leads to deep self-acceptance. And
Right.
the last 2 modules about creating success habits. So now there's a whole library full of
Mhm.
leadership books that tell you, oh, you should do this, be this, think that.
Mm.
And often they aren't easily implemented because of the conditional worth belief. So once we've cleared that out, then we do some systematic work in
Mm.
really upgrading your success habits, your performance habits, and it works fabulously. So the 3 steps are calm, clear, create.
Mm. Wow. I have time for 3 more questions, Tara. In your book, Unmasking, you guide coaches through supporting others with imposter syndrome.
Mm.
What is the most important skill a coach should bring to that kind of work?
This is a great question. So, in fact, I've been training a group of coaches. So I've got 9 coaches I've been training recently, and my program, I actually make sure they go through it themselves first
Mm.
so that they learn how to deeply accept themselves and deeply accept other people.
Mm.
And in the coaching and therapy world, there's a phrase for this, a term for it, which is unconditional positive regard.
Mhm.
So it means that you're there totally accepting and not judging the person that you're with.
Right.
It's a very powerful a skill. So it's very powerful when you do it. And it's really hard to learn
Mm.
because people get triggered.
Yeah.
They say
Yeah.
something and it'll trigger you, or you remember something from your past. It
Mm.
can be very hard. So what I do is I make sure that they've cleared that for themselves, and
Mhm.
that makes them really effective coaches. So that's the
Mm.
very best thing that you can do for your client is to hold unconditional positive regard for them.
Mm. Amazing. 2 more questions. How do you help someone build what you call effortless confidence? And I'm sure these 2 words are probably going to be, uh, everyone needs effortless confidence.
Yes, yes. So the effortless confidence, and this is something again that I noticed as a result. So I didn't start my program thinking it was going to build this.
Mm.
But what happens is that in that middle stage where we're clearing the beliefs, what we're doing is we're actually clearing from the brain, from a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is the fear center. We're clearing out the reactivity, right? We at a very fundamental level, which means that people become less and less triggered by stressful events around them.
Mm.
And they build this deep self confidence in that, deep self acceptance. And the result is they forget to doubt themselves.
Mm.
So an opportunity comes along, and rather than the old imposter syndrome thinking, who am I to take this on? What if I fail? Maybe I don't deserve to do it. Why did they ask me? Like all of those kind of questions. It becomes oh, that's interesting. I
Mm.
wonder about this, and it becomes something exciting to experiment with, an
Right.
adventure.
Right.
And that's why it's effortless, because it's automatic. It's not you're sitting there thinking, I must be confident, this sounds like a good opportunity. You don't push yourself through the discomfort.
Mm.
It's just gone. And that's wonderful.
Amazing. Yeah. And my last question for you, what does unconditional worth mean in your coaching, and why is it so central to healing imposter syndrome?
I've hinted at this as we go through. So conditional worth is the root cause of imposter syndrome. You develop unconditional worth, and what happens is all the symptoms fall away.
Mm.
So a lot of approaches in to imposter syndrome, coaching, training, things like that, they're focused on those symptoms of the
Mm.
thoughts, the response, the behaviors, and working on those. Because we work on the root cause, it really just completely gets rid of imposter syndrome. So, for example, if people they measure the stress that it's causing them on a scale of 1 to 10. And the average starting point is 8.3.
Mhm.
So it's high. And your standard training and coaching will take you down to about 6. And we get people down to 2.8.
Mm.
2.8 out of 10. It just goes. And
Mm.
that is the lived experience of unconditional worth, is
Mm.
that deep self-acceptance.
Amazing. And on that note, Tara, I just want to say what an amazing conversation this has been, about imposter syndrome. Most of us know about imposter syndrome, or even if we don't know these two words, very often we do tell ourselves, I'm not good enough, or how can, are they really talking about me? I think you
Yes.
highlighted some amazing insights into this imposter syndrome. And I'm sure my viewers and listeners will really love hearing all your deep thoughts about this whole topic. Thank you
No.
again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. An absolute pleasure. Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.